If you were to ask me my favorite film, I'd waffle between a few of them before settling on the 1988 Korean film Chilsu and Mansu, a story that shows the struggle of two men trying to persist in the world as their jobs as billboard painters fade into obscurity, in a country being culturally imperialized by the United States. Amongst the many themes, from toxic masculinity to how capitalism will literally drown out those oppressed by it, being shown the effects of America's colonizing reach across the globe bleach out the traditions and way of life for innocent people and present it in such a pure, inescapable perspective never fails to shake me and has greatly changed who I am and how I see the world. How, even in my need to find stability and sanctity in my own environment, I am continually aware of how I help to perpetuate these issues. It's hard to find anywhere legally, but if you can find a copy, I can't recommend it enough. Chilsu and Mansu is a film that will resound in me until the end of my days. However, if you ask me what my favorite video was, I'd probably reply with the original VHS copy of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. More than any Blu-ray or DVD or Laserdisc, this tape was a favorite of mine for the timestamp in history that it was. The incredible graininess of the film, coupled with
Watch a
early
Warner Brothers
advertisements
movie
for the
without a
Warner
Warner
Brothers
Brothers
ball
ball
cap,
cap.
and Alfred ordering more Diet Coke on the Bat phone. Doesn't hurt that it's coupled with maybe the best Batman movie. There are more optimal formats out there to watch movies. Blu-ray seems to be the final physical format that we've landed on to maintain physical media, though you can't go wrong with a good thumb drive if you ask me. But while they may be more optimal, optimal doesn't always mean better. No, wait, don't go looking that up. No. What I'm getting at is that the context of the VHS copy of Batman is a far better experience, in my opinion, than trying to watch it in 4K IMAX today. In fact, many classic films are best presented in their older forms to truly appreciate the context of their time. In front of me is one of the most important board games of all time. If you know what it is, it doesn't need any introduction. However, if you aren't familiar, you may be asking, what is so important about this game that was clearly designed centuries ago? Dominion is the grandest of grandfathers in the deck building genre. Its contribution to board gaming is objectively massive, and yet I've never played it. I've played dozens and dozens of deck builders, but it wasn't until this year that I was actually able to sit down and try out Dominion. Now, here I am, Dominion well researched, an absurdly long video ahead, all of which to say, like a good 80s VHS flick, it's not only excellent, but learning about its place in the hobby, both historically and in quality, makes it all the more worthwhile. Now, if you're a real freak like me, you maybe haven't played this ancient relic of a game. Well, I'll do my best to quickly summarize. Everyone starts the game with this measly deck of coinage and points. Nothing much to look at. However, you will be souping it up through the game by going to this market, comprised of both cards that are set in every single game you'll play, as well as a fun variety of action cards that'll be randomized and changed up each time you sit down to play. You will gather up 5 cards and recite your ABCs. A. Action. A majority of the market will be an assortment of action cards that will do fun and exciting things. B. Buy. You start the game with 7 one-value copper cards in your deck. You can use these to purchase cards from the market, including money cards, actions, and green point cards to add to your deck. C. Cards. At the end of your turn, everything in your hand is discarded, and you draw up a new fresh hand of 5 new cards. When your deck runs out and you need to draw, you need to take your discard pile, full of all of your new exciting purchases, and shuffle them to make a new deck with new opportunities and excitement. If you've played a few rounds of anything with more zest than the standard Monopoly, you may be asking yourself, where's the fun? Where's the spice? It's also simplistic and rudimentary. There's got to be more to it than that, right? Yeah, sort of. Let me take a second here to bring you back to the market. See, here is the meat of the game, as we will continue the game in our symmetrical decks that we started with will all begin to find their own identity through the various purchases you make in the game. The market comprises of three basic options to purchase: coinage, so you can afford pricier things in the future; green cards, which score points at the end of the game; and action cards, so that you can augment your turn with better options and potential for combos. The actions can twist your turn slightly to allow one more action, draw more cards, or maybe even let you buy two cards in place of one. There are occasionally aggressive cards that will force opponents to discard or fill their decks with evil curses. And each time you set the game up, you will have a different array of action cards to select from that will make your strategies wildly different. And yet again, I find you, a very real person and not someone I made up in my head, saying, it's still also elementary. Where's the beef? Where's the sauce? And well, with various setup comes dozens of different combinations of cards you can add to the market. Even here, just in the base game, the different options add for a smorgasbord of potential. And yet, yeah, that's it. The money itself in the base game comes in denominations of 1, 2, and 3. The point cards do decide the winner of the game when it's all said and done, but they do nothing else in your deck and will consistently slow your combo potential to a molasses-coated crawl, uphill both ways in a blizzard. And while the market has options, very few of the cards feel original and do more than cookie-cutter generic actions of giving you more stuff. To top things off, it is coated in this ancient aesthetic. And I'm not just talking about the flavorless medieval theming, but the actual art itself is so absurdly bland. There's almost nothing joyous or thrilling to write home about in any card's artistic choices, and the graphic design coupling it makes for a wildly unappealing combination. On more than one occasion, I have asked people to look upon this box or select cards and try to guess when this game was released. And on once or twice, people have been off by 30 or even 40 years, as if it belongs on the shelves with dime store novels that predate the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Look, the point I'm trying to make is it feels like there's a non 0% chance that actual feudal lords play Dominion on a duchy of their own Dominion. So, why are we here? Why am I talking about this fossil of a game that feels like Rodney Smith's grandpappy likely recorded the instructions for on a phonograph wax cylinder? Because, as much as I have been roasting this game, understandably so, Dominion still holds up. It still has legs. Even though it is the first in a genre that would go on to be well oversaturated, Dominion is able to pave its own unique path that still stands out amongst its successors to this day. Today, you're more likely to hear about the smooth, streamlined gameplay of Slay the Spire, or Star Realms, or Star Wars, the deck building game. Deck builders that delight in combos, working with the hand you're given and seeing if you can drop a gajillion damage in one turn. These games' markets flow and change with every move, making tactics breaking fast. And that flow is appealing. I love it. But it also kind of diminishes the two pillars of Dominion's lasting appeal. The first pillar being the heft of victory. To win in Dominion, you need to buy points. They are expensive. And once they're in your deck, they do nothing else. You may have a turn or two where buying these points just break your hand with nothing else to do. And to have such a well oiled machine that you've been tuning this whole time occasionally just slam on emergency brakes, it makes you ask questions. Did I buy that at the right time? Is this going to win me the game? Or did I shoot myself in the foot as my friends seem to go faster and faster, and I have these slower and slower turns? There's just this fantastic balance that you aren't going to see in a lot of other games, as if they're afraid that these chunkier, slower turns might slow down that serotonin. I kind of see it the opposite, that instead we're given much more thought, much more thinking than just trying to build a combo, but rather weigh our risks and rewards. Because one of the fun things about this game is that unless someone has done a complete blowout, there's no telling who really won the game until the game ends. You turn those decks over and you go and find and count up all those points. And all those bricks that you've been slowing your engine with come back to win you the game. The other big factor, and I feel this is the best part of Dominion, is the market itself. Now, most deck builders today are going to give you a market that is just a display of a handful of cards. They will change every turn, asking you this exciting question of what will come next. It's a blazing tempo, but at best, it kind of just gives the illusion of strategy in place of tactics and luck. You can, for instance, you can try to run a fully yellow deck in Star Realms, hoping that you can draw out your whole deck and make your opponent discard their whole hand. But you first have to hope those yellow cards come up. The market in Dominion, however, while full of variables in its setup, doesn't change or shift for the game. All the cards are shown on turn one, and they remain that way. The game is less about worrying what will come up, but more you searching for what you can best build with what's on the menu. This is the content. This is the quality that you're looking for today. Ah, yeah. Charlie, do you want to play Dominion? That got you to walk away real fast. Jerk. The market in Dominion, however, blessing. The market in Dominion, however, while full of variables, doesn't change or shift in the setup. Instead, all the cards are available from the get go. What you see on turn one is what is there for the entire game. This is less searching for the pieces that might make something up and more looking and trying to build something with whatever is on the menu. More importantly, I feel this format makes for something a lot more interesting where I actually build a relationship with the cards.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
There's got to be a better way to say that. Looking at Slay the Spire, for instance, I've put an exhausting amount of time into the game, mastering the characters, unlocking all their cards, and getting a huge kick out of it. That said, I couldn't tell you the name of more than a handful of cards. Most are just an illustration that kickstarts the memory in my monkey brain of what the card's function actually is, and I just press buttons reflexively. Dominion's market changes every game. There are roughly 10 action cards that you will add into your setup, and they are there for the whole game. You will learn their names, you will learn their uses, or lack thereof. And in doing so, each of those cards has a lot more weight. Take the moat, for instance. This is a classic Dominion card, as it defends from attack cards, like the Militia, who would be a required addition into your deck, but with this out, kind of changes if it's worth it or not, right? And when that one friend picks up over half the village cards and uses them all every other turn to go through their deck, you remember that. Instead of witnessing dozens of different cards that blur into generic colors and numbers, you quickly lock in with the card itself. And in doing so, are a little closer connected to it than I find myself to be in other traditional deck building games. I find myself excited to draw atrociously ugly cards like the Smithy or the Festival. And that's really special. Dominion has all of the quick, snappy card play of its successors, but it also has this serpentine feel as you go about adding more and more cool pieces to your lightning fast engine, while also clogging it up with more points and more gold, making the whole experience just a little fuller, with just a little more substance, just giving it just that little extra staying power in the mind that is so rare in this genre. I cannot stress how much of a fan I am of where games are today. Well, maybe not today.
The higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come down. The tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious.
Dominion, in all of its rustic clunkiness, strips away the slipstream we've slowly crafted around contemporary games today, and it just gives something slower, simpler, and maybe even a little more intimate. It sticks around its successors, much like its visual stylings do. And yes, while garish, absurdly designed, the art, much like its gameplay, is actually indicative of its time. Coming close to 20 years in existence, Dominion, both aesthetically and functionally, stands on its own and is a true cultural keystone of the hobby. What some new enthusiasts may not realize is that this art is not too distant from the other base stylings of its day. I also think it's incredibly fortunate that while it's had some slight retoolings in its second edition, Dominion hasn't undergone any real retheming or remaking of its art. Even other classics of its time have had facelifts and touch ups. Dominion sits there almost stubbornly refusing to give up its dedication to its god awful title font or its dedication to beige. And it gets kind of endearing. And I actually have a real great respect for that. Even its rulebook is antiquated, as setup always demands that you start with curse cards in the setup of the game. They are -1 points, they have no usage unless the witch is a part of the market, which odds are it might not be, making them pointless. Board Game Design 101 would tell you that you just would not include them in this case, or maybe have them as just tokens. And yet, Dominion grunts with almost a begrudging tone that you get from your disapproving grandparents.
I've done it this way since before you were playing checkers. I ain't changing now.
That's kind of charming. I will, however, express that while aesthetics have stayed true, I'm not as thrilled about the shelf space remaining as it is. While I feel preserving stylings of an era keeps the history intact, the box's proportions are frankly offensive, both outdated and wasteful. Now, one could argue that you need this size box for all the expansions, which may be, but those expansions come in equally large and gargantuan boxes, and they don't need to. If you collect all the expansions for this game, and quite frankly, I know people that do, and I would kind of like to as well, doing so will amass you more wasted, unused cardboard than most people, most families have in their entire board game collection. Despite the incredible amount of variation found in just the base game alone, when stripped down to its core, this game is a fraction of the box's size. And as the planet continues to boil, as we toss more and more resources into the furnace to make our goods and commodities, one would hope that there could be a little more conscientious effort about our impact on it. The deep dive I've been taking into Dominion has really awakened an odd love I have for earlier games, and that urge to play those vintage rules on maps that look like they came out of a museum's basement. Amidst Kickstarter games and video game adaptations and 500 miniatures, a $1,500 pledge gives you all this and more, kind of find myself returning to these bland brown boxes, sifting through the grainy past and just enjoying the brilliance that comes from simple and humble games. In fact, coupling this video is a write-up I did in Korea's top board game magazine Malpan, where I'll also talk about Dominion's slightly older brother, Race for the Galaxy, the game that makes zero effort to win your love, but might still deserve it. So, does Dominion deserve a spot on your shelf? I mean, if we're being honest, really honest, chances are you already know the answer. It's probably on your shelf, isn't it? Or it has been. You're here on a video about an old game that you have or used to own. And you know what? No judgment. I've been there myself. It's just really nice to hear someone wax and wane about something you enjoy so much. And hey, thank you for choosing this video. However, you may not have heard it. And having heard everything I have to say, that's about it. I mean, I'd say it's definitely worth a pickup, a try. If you can find a local board game cafe or store to try it out at, it's definitely worth an effort. But if my negatives have scared you off, I don't know what will bring you back. Not only that, but like I've said, this genre has thousands to choose from. There are tons out there, digital or analog. I've mentioned Slay the Spire, Arctic Scavengers, Star Realms, Baseball Highlights 2045. Or if you're a bajillionaire, you can go hunt down the Resident Evil deck building game, my very first hobby game. Oh, how I wish I had you back again. But alas. That said, and all jokes aside, I'd say you deserve to at least try Dominion out. Love it, hate it. I feel most can find the respect it deserves. I mean, heck, a year ago, I imagined I didn't even have time for this old deck of cards. I was too cool and too modern. And now here I am, gushing about it well past 20 minutes, and maybe that says it all itself. I'm not sure how to finish this video. I'm ashamed to say I don't even know where I was going with it when I started, but this game really shook me, and I wanted to share with you what I got out of it. That Dominion can stand uniquely on its own, despite being derived from to a point where an entire genre seems to be built on finding its replacement. That even when we have 4K resolution, sometimes you just can't beat a 4.3 classic, and there's a little magic in that, isn't there? Guess that's all I had to say, so hope you liked it. Take care of yourself. See you next time.